Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is the IC2 webinar for members only on ChemForward. We are not in the year 2021, as you see in the slide. I'm shooting us ahead 1 year, but 2020, obviously. I am Melissa Netto. I am the new IC2 project manager, and I'm really happy to be here helping to introduce our speakers today. But before we have them come on, we are going to have IC2 member and training group chair Kevin Masters say a few words first. So I'd like to welcome Kevin to come aboard. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, thank you, Melissa. As Melissa said, my name is Kevin Masterson, and I'm the chair of the IC2 Training Work Group. And our group plans webinars and other information sharing events, and we encourage IC2 members to provide us with their ideas for future topics. If you have any, please forward them to me or Melissa. And also, if any of you have any interest in joining the Training Work Group, we definitely have slots available. So we'd love to have you join our group if that's of interest to you. And today we will be highlighting the work of ChemForward, which is the IC2's newest supporting member. And ChemForward is a nonprofit science-based collaboration working to build a globally harmonized repository of chemical hazard assessments for safer alternatives. And they're creating a platform to centralize hazard assessments and to allow users to search for safer alternatives. And you'll hear a lot more about that platform and how it's going to work, how it is working. And we do have two presenters from ChemForward today. First is Dr. Lauren Hine, and Dr. Hine works to protect human and environmental health by applying alternatives assessment, green chemistry, green engineering, and multi-stakeholder collaboration to the development of products and processes. And she's the Director of Science and Data Integrity for ChemForward. She also led the creation and development of Green Screen for safer chemicals and the Green Screen List Translator, increasingly used for chemical hazard assessments throughout the world. She has also led the creation and development of Clean Ingredients, a web-based information platform for identifying greener chemicals in cleaning products in partnership with EPA's Safer Choice program. This is the first database of positive ingredients. And Lauren was also executive director at the Northwest Green Chemistry Group, an organization that continues on, and she serves as a senior advisor still. She co-chairs the Apple Green Chemistry Advisory Board, which is tasked with helping to integrate green chemistry into Apple's products and supply chain. For the OECD, she drafted policy principles for sustainable materials management and considerations and criteria for sustainable plastics from a chemical perspective. So she has a broad range of experience working in nonprofits and working with for-profit businesses and government. She earned her doctorate in civil and environmental engineering from Duke University. And the second speaker that we'll have is Stacy Glass, who is the executive director of ChemForward, and she will be joining us a little later. She has a conflict right now, but will be joining us very soon. When she joined the Cradle to Cradle Product Innovation Institute in 2011, Stacy knew she was becoming part of an important movement. She couldn't have envisioned just how far-reaching the scope of work would become and how safer chemistry would become central to the circular economy. This evolution highlighted a clear and specific need to create better, more accessible material health knowledge for designers and manufacturers across all industries. In 2017, Stacy's team began working on a new initiative called MaterialWise to expand access to verified chemical hazard assessment information as an accelerator for positive design. In 2018, they spun out of Cradle to Cradle and engaged in a co-design and proof of concept pilot alongside partners from Target, Google, Nike, Levi's, Method, Steelcase, Environmental Defense Fund, CNA Foundation, ZDHC, and many more. She has 25 years experience encompassing management consulting, high growth startups, and public-private partnership, and has an MBA from Duke University. So Duke University is very well represented today. And with that, I will turn it over to Lauren to kick things off.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And I am just waiting for the baton here. Great. Okay, can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you to IC2, thank you Kevin, Melissa, Andy for the invitation and the opportunity to speak today about ChemForward. It's a new initiative and our goal is to transform fundamentally the way that chemical hazard information is created, maintained, distributed, and financed. And our theory of change, I think, is very well understood by a group like IC2. We believe that reliable chemical hazard information underpins the entire pathway to building safe, circular, and equitable products. And as many in IC2 are working on the issue of transparency, you understand the importance of understanding what is in products and what chemicals are flowing within the supply chain. That enables the ability to manage chemicals, whether it's regulatory compliance or compliance with restricted substances list. And then the next phase of that would be to create greener solutions when good, safe, healthy, circular options are not currently available. But we think there's a gap. There are increasingly number of tools to support transparency, and also, as this group knows, increasingly number of regulations that are trying to advance transparency in product ingredients. There are tools and long-standing efforts to support chemical management, whether it's regulatory compliance list, RSLs, precautionary screening tools. But in this space of chemical management and product optimization, we have some of the nascent tools available, but nothing available at scale. There are certifications like Cradle to Cradle, Green Screen Certified, TOX FMD, but that does not really give product manufacturers the toolbox they need to choose safer alternatives in designing products and in designing things that are truly innovative. So ChemForward is a science-based nonprofit value chain collaboration. We want to be the globally trusted source of cost-effective chemical hazard information for safer alternatives. We think that trusted data underlies the path for proactive decision-making that will lead to eliminating chemicals with high hazards, avoiding regrettable substitutions, facilitating business-to-business transparency, and designing safer and more sustainable products from the start. So the way we're doing this is by building a globally harmonized repository of chemical hazard assessments, which I refer to as CHAs. Now I'll talk a little bit about how we've developed what we call a universal input template, where an assessor can enter information for one chemical so that there is one CHA per chemical CAS number. Centralizing CHAs this way creates a foundation of consistency for all sorts of CHA-based programs, and it eliminates redundant work, redundant cost, and allows things to really continually improve when they're centralized, and there's one CHA per chemical. We then curate safer alternatives based on these CHAs. So we pool together safer alternatives based on function, whether it's alternatives to phthalates in personal care products or plasticizers or flame retardants or all sorts of chemicals used in beauty and personal care. That's to help people identify inherently safer alternatives. And we engage with suppliers, users, experts to optimize information. And I'll share with you a little bit about what this looks like and how we're trying to really create an ecosystem that will make this happen kind of on its own. But part of the reason this came about is in the early days, Stacy led an initiative that involved interviewing retailers, brands, manufacturers about the industry, across industry, and she was with the Cradle to Cradle certified program. And they recognized that there were some obstacles to moving toward greener products. One was that comprehensive chemical hazard assessments were identified as expensive, duplicative, and protected on private systems. And there was a recognized need for a nonprofit clearinghouse with a sustainable business model. There was also recognition that chemical hazard assessment schemes are not harmonized and the data aren't portable, that there's a need for a harmonized GHS-based input that allows for multiple outputs. We're not saying there should be one chemical hazard assessment method used. The same data underlies pretty much all of the methods that are currently available. The chemical profiles weren't peer-reviewed or validated by an independent panel. There's really a need for third-party, one profile per chemical. You could shop around, go to different assessors, get different results. Chemical suppliers weren't engaged as partners in the process. There's a need to bring forward the better alternatives that chemical manufacturers are making and to share what internal data they have. And then companies really need actionable information. It's a little bit overwhelming dealing with a lot of toxicological data if you don't have a nice, relatively simple way that you're comfortable interpreting the information. So how it works. First of all, ChemForward identifies high priority chemistries. We start with regulations and RSLs, which help indicate what not to use, but that raises the question of what to use instead. Without robust, high quality data, you can't answer this question, and everybody is vulnerable to a regrettable substitution. So we research better alternatives. We work with existing working groups, we review performance data, we reach out to suppliers, we mine databases of alternatives. We also allow suppliers to submit potentially safer alternatives. We then hire licensed assessors to perform the CHAs using our universal GHS-based plus input, and they prepare a report. We then send that assessment via our platform to a third-party external toxicologist for what we call verification. It's really a peer review where they comment on all the completeness and quality of the assessment. And then we post what we call portfolio, the CHAs of the alternatives for particular functions. We post that on our system after they're verified. And our system is, these are chemical hazard assessments. They're not risk assessments. They're not, we say this is hazard first. It's not hazard only. We recognize the importance of considering exposure and use and all of that, but we think that having the hazard information available is the first step. And we do present the information by route of exposures. So we think this is really important to know if you're going to use a particular chemical and there's a potential for inhalation exposure, then you really need to know if inhalation data are available. And if not, maybe you have a data gap, even if you have oral data. So yeah, I'll stop there. So we think there's benefits to brands or retailers. They can point to a tool like ChemForward to help implement their policies and RSLs. They can ask suppliers to go find safer alternatives. Manufacturers can find safer alternatives to make safer products. Chemical suppliers can use ChemForward as a platform to prove and vet that their options are truly safer. Regulators and policymakers can reference ChemForward to substantiate the availability of safer alternatives to advance science-based regulations. And consumers and consumer advocates can get the benefit. They prefer brands with robust chemical management policies that prioritize safer chemicals, and they will get the benefit of a broad selection of safe and circular products. So I'm going to switch tracks. That's the background. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we mean by a globally harmonized repository and a universal input. All of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the idea of chemical hazard assessment. It's a systematic process of assessing and classifying hazards across a spectrum of endpoints and severity. And the most well-known ones, of course, are the Globally Harmonized System, or GHS. It's updated every 2 years by the United Nations. There's the Cradle to Cradle Material Health Methodology. There's the Design for the Environment Program Alternatives Assessment Criteria for Safe Hazard Evaluation, and Green Screen for Safer Chemicals. So what's the problem? Well, using even the same methodology, different assessors will arrive at different classification results for the same chemical. It happens fairly often. Toxicology is as much an art as a science. There's a lot of judgment that needs to occur. Different people might look at different data sets. People might value different types of data more than others. So there's really room for differentiation here. So then when the methodology varies too, whether you're talking about Vera, Cradle to Cradle, Green Screen, whatever, the inconsistencies and multiply. And this can really do a disservice and give people, frankly, ammunition who might want to discredit the use of chemical hazard assessment. But what we learned is that all credible methods are based primarily on GHS, but we recognize that interpretation and reporting can vary. Therefore, we think having a single source of information is credible. And what I mean by it's all based on the same data is this. So if you were to assess carcinogenicity and decide that something was a category 2 carcinogen in the GHS system, that just establishes its status. But if you were to report the results of this in Safer Choice program, you would report this as high. If you were to report the results of category 2 carcinogen classification in Green Screen, you would report it as medium. And if you were to report category 2 carcinogenicity in Cradle to Cradle, you would report it in red. That can confuse people. But it's all based on the exact same data and the exact same classification. So that's why we think one input can be verified, really vetted carefully, but it can still translate into multiple views, some of which are more precautionary than others. So we want to build trust in the science of these CHAs. We start with existing classification methods. ChemForward is not a new CHA method. It uses existing CHA methods. We license assessors, and what's interesting here is we're testing a business model whereby they own and maintain the CHAs they create. And when someone subscribes to ChemForward, the assessors are paid. This helps overcome the obstacle of every assessor keeping their own assessments internally and doing them over and over again, but not allowing them to be publicly available or even to see where there are conflicts with assessments done by assessors of the same chemical. We have the additional peer review process by independent toxicologists. And we also have what we call a technical challenge improvement process, whereby anybody can challenge any technical element of a ChemForward chemical hazard assessment. We think that's really important because people do interpret things differently, and people may have access to information that someone missed, or maybe it wasn't published yet. And we have a policy that supports that for incorporating data that are private into the CHAs. Basically, we require this data to be summarized and reviewed by the assessor, and then the summary and classifications are reviewed by the peer review as well. So we can incorporate this private data as well. And we have a governance program. Sorry, the slide's hard to see on my screen. that includes transparency and best practices. We have a technical advisory committee. The assessors consider all available data, global governmental databases, scientific literature, private data in accordance with our policy, authoritative and screening lists, and new approach methods, or NAMs, as they become more and more accepted, and as our assessors get more and more comfortable with using them. They include read across, in vitro, and silico integrated approaches that support decisions made based on a weight of evidence when you have different types of data from different types of tests. So now I have prepared a demo. I have the live app up on my screen and would be happy to show it, but I thought for the sake of consistency, it might be smart to use the screenshots first. So the ChemForward, what we're calling V2, is going to be launched in a few weeks. And we're starting by creating what we call verticals. Our first vertical is beauty and personal care. So all of the chemicals that are included in the system are used in beauty and personal care, and they have functions that are relevant to beauty and personal care. So if you were to click on, say, preservatives, it would pull up all of the chemicals that are identified as preservatives, and it would identify whether or not there is a chemical hazard assessment available for that preservative. If there is no chemical hazard assessment available, you'll see a question mark, and we have ChemForward is an independent project of Healthy Building Network, and we're in partnership with Pharos. And so if we don't have a full CHA, then you can go look at the chemical in the Pharos system, which is based on lists, not full CHAs. And you can search by performance claims, sustainability claims, appearance, applications, etc. And that's really to help people find viable alternatives. So how this works is the assessor enters information into what we call the back end, the assessor view, and they research all the data. So here you can see, say, for carcinogenicity, it's broken out by exposure route, oral, dermal, inhalation. They enter in all the data that they have. They start with test data, animal data, and then they go to modeling data and surrogate data. They put all their data summary here. They indicate their confidence. They indicate the classification. And inside our system currently, we have GHS and cradle-to-cradle views, and there are a few what we call cradle-to-cradle-isms, things that they have to indicate to be consistent with the cradle-to-cradle system. And in cradle-to-cradle, to say something is low for carcinogenicity, you have to have negative long-term cancer studies. So the assessor enters all of this into the back end and saves it. Then once it's ready, they hit submit, and we assign it to a verifier. And you can see here that the verifier can actually make comments in the app, and then the assessor can actually respond to those comments, and they go back and forth until the verifier is happy with the resolution. Sometimes it could be, the verifier looks for completeness. They look to make sure they actually agree with the classification. They do some spot checking to make sure there's no data missing that were important. And then once the verifier is happy, and then they click verify, and the chemical is put onto the main platform. And so you can see back here, we have yet, even though we use some fantastic toxicologists as our assessors, we have never had a single, no comments and no edits made through the verification process. So you can watch these sort of going down. You'll see 18, then there'll be 3, and then 1, and then finally it'll get verified. And so then we, as I mentioned, we curate these by function, and we also have what we call portfolios, but in our app, we really refer to them as safer alternatives. We've grouped, for example, all our safer plasticizers. These are alternatives to certain phthalate-based plasticizers. These are alternatives to benzophenone sunscreens. These are, alternatives to certain preservatives. These are alternatives to diethyl phthalate and fragrance solvents or fixatives. So these are the safer alternatives, but you can still search for alternatives that may not be safer, and you'll probably get something like an LT1 or something in Pharos when you search there. We also let's see. We also well, I won't go there. So you pull up your search, and if you can see at a high level what the Cradle to Cradle score is. You can see any GHS health hazard statements, GHS environmental hazard statements, and we've created what we call a hazard band that kind of unifies this, because frankly, the Cradle to Cradle has something like 16 different chemical ratings, and it's a little overwhelming. So we thought, well, let's just create simple A, B, C, F question mark hazard bands that can sort of be a lot easier to follow. So if you say you've searched now for safer plasticizers and you want to click on one of these chemicals, you just click on the chemical name, and this actually isn't a plasticizer, but it's a good example of what our V2 view looks like. It takes you to the chemical. You can see synonyms. Here's the summary. There's all these tabs that I'll show you. The hazard tab where you can see the hazard summary tables. There's chemical identifiers, physical properties, functional uses, which cosmetic or beauty and personal care hazard regulatory lists is it on or not on. And these are non-regulatory, but RSL type lists relevant to beauty and personal care. And you can see who did the assessment and when it expires, things like that. So you click along the different tabs. So here's what a hazard summary table view looks like. This is the GHS view. So this is the view using all the same data, but presenting only using the GHS criteria. NC means not classified. Bold means high confidence. Italic and parenthesis means low confidence. And this CAT2 means category 2. And so if you click on any one of these cells, you see what we call the rationale. This is what the assessors said is the reason they classified the chemical the way they did for this particular endpoint. You can also see it in the Cradle to Cradle certified view. And again, it's the exact same data, but this is what it looks like through a different lens of criteria. Cradle to Cradle uses green, yellow, red. Gray means data gap. Oh, and with the GHS, CNP means classification not possible, and that is the same as data gap. And again, here, what's different about it, Cradle to Cradle is more precautionary. Cradle to Cradle includes an endpoint for endocrine disruption. Cradle to Cradle breaks out mammalian toxicity by exposure route. So if there are no data, for example, for inhalation, you'll see that. You won't see that in the other systems necessarily. It also breaks out aquatic toxicity by species. Instead of being acute or chronic, fish, daphne, algae, it breaks it out by species. And that can be very useful because it's not always the same for different species. Cradle to Cradle includes persistence, bioaccumulation, climatic relevance, other human health, other environmental things. So it's a little more precautionary and has a few more endpoints than straight GHS. And again, you can click on a cell and see the rationales. And as I mentioned before, we have developed these hazard bands to sort of expedite, make it a lot easier to understand. And A is extremely low hazard and low risk. B would have some moderate hazards, but again, very low risk. C could have some moderate or even certain hazards that were higher, and moderate risk, or it has a level of uncertainty that could result in moderate risk. So if the data gaps were high, then that could be a risk. F is high hazards, high risk in most scenarios. U means the CHA has been completed, but there are too many data gaps to assign a score or to rate it. And question mark means there is no CHA for that chemical. We did a lot of analysis looking at some different methods, and we've incorporated other systems into the hazard bands. So for example, if something is on the EPA skill, green full circle, we've put that into the B hazard band. Theoretically, it could also go into the A, but because the full CHA is available, we decided we should be a little more conservative with that and put it into the B hazard band. If it's a green half circle, yellow triangle, that goes into the C hazard band. Again, it's anything C or higher is really pretty good. But there's some uncertainty here or some moderate hazards. And we also looked at how this would compare to, say, green screen. The A would be like a benchmark 4, the B would be like a benchmark 3, C a 2, F a 1, U would be benchmark U, and again, no assessment there. So it's possible to use these hazard bands for equivalency. So what's nice is you get to use your favorite system and then use the hazard bands to align the results of them, so they're really not as different as some people might like to suggest. So what's next? Our goal going forward is to start scaling these assessments. It's been a lot of work to get the first batch in there and to get them working. And the app is really neat. Yeah, I can't imagine that it wouldn't be something that chemical companies would like to use too, to keep track of their hazard data. You can access it from anywhere and share information and communicate on the back end. So we're excited about where it is. There's always new things to develop and add in and improve. We want to continue to get more efficient in the time it takes to enter a CHA and get it verified. And we're going, as I mentioned, we're going to be launching, hopefully by the end of this month, we're looking at assessing polymers and mixtures and chemicals that are identified by trade names, not just by CAS number. And we're doing this by sectors, starting with beauty and personal care, then electronics and food packaging. We're also doing portfolios in the built environment, plastic additives, and apparel. And this is kind of our vision for how this works. It's a circle, and it can start anywhere, but let's say we have this registry of verified safer ingredients organized by function, CAS number, and or trade name. And this allows brands, manufacturers to create innovative products using safer alternatives, and they can easily communicate what's in their formula. I've got 2 B's and a C at X%. Buyers or retailers can benefit from this because they can say, we don't want you to use things on our RSLs, and we don't want you to use regrettable substitutions either. So how about if you use anything that's C or higher or B or higher in the ChemForward system? The assessors are absolutely key. Someone can go to them directly and ask them to put an assessment in our system, or they can come through ChemForward and we'll commission them to do the work. But we also think this is a really big opportunity for chemical suppliers. Brands can ask their chemical suppliers to enter the data, to contact an assessor to enter the data into the system, or suppliers might want to do it on their own if they have safer alternatives. It's really an opportunity to say, don't believe us, look at this independent chemical hazard assessment, and there's your proof. So we think that engaging them that way is really an opportunity for everyone, and our goal is to activate this ecosystem so that it kind of runs on its own. There's all sorts of potential applications for this kind of information. So I guess lastly, I'll say there are a number of ways to get involved. We have what we call CoDesign Partners. These are different companies, NGOs. We would very much welcome state government, IC2 members to participate in helping with developing this platform and this vision. So please, if you're interested, feel free to contact me. Our philosophy is kind of tied to this quote. This is a journey, and we believe that everyone should do the best they can until they know better. And then when they know better, they'll do better. And we think that ChemForward is really an opportunity for people to know better and do better. So I will stop there and take any questions.
Hey Laura, it's Stacy. I joined you, so if there's anything I can do to support, I just want to let you know I'm here. Great job.
Thanks. Yeah, feel free if you want to make any comments, please do.
Oh, I thought you covered the material really well. But let's hear from the audience. Don't take my word for it.
He's biased.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Stacy, for coming on. If people do have any questions, then raise your virtual hand, and we can see it, or you can put it in the chat box. I don't have any at this point. I don't know if there's any areas that you wanted to highlight, Lauren and Stacy, or we can wait a few moments and see if any questions do come in. But we'll always wrap up early if we need to.
Yeah, I'd love to jump in. It's been so great to become a member of the IC2, and we appreciate this opportunity to share our work with the other members. And IC2, was at the forefront of providing a repository, a place, for chemical hazard assessments to be housed. And I know over time it's grown, and I'm wondering if members have a feeling for what they'd like to see next, how they'd like to see that evolve, and what we might do to help contribute to that.
Great. No, thank you. We're really excited to have this information, and we will be planning to post this for all other members to see. And I will work with you, Lauren, as well. There were a couple slides that were cut out on the bottom, so I will make sure that people have access to just areas that just so people have that for clarification.
That's great. Yeah, you have the PDF version, so feel free to post it.
Great. And if there are no questions, then we can begin the wrap up.
Melissa, there are some questions that have come in through the question pane. They're not in the chat. They're not in the chat box, but they did come in through the question feature.
Oh, good. Okay, great.
So I'll just start while you're pulling them up.
Thank you for catching that.
Oh, sure. Yes, Susan Dawn asked, who assigns the ChemForward hazard band?
There is an algorithm that we use. It's in this slide here. So depending on, if you go to our website, well, actually, I don't know if it's up yet, Stacy, that we use the cradle to cradle chemical rating system. And we first assign the chemical rating, and then depending on the cradle to cradle chemical rating, that dictates the hazard band. So if the cradle to cradle chemical rating is a B or a C/B, then it's in the ChemForward B hazard band. If it's any of these, as I mentioned, there's quite a few of them, it's a C. If it's any of these, it's an F. And so you see, that the cradle to cradle hazard band is based on a scoring algorithm that's based on the hazard summary table, which you would see. So you would see it here. So this chemical was a C/B, so it's in the B hazard band. So it's all mapped out, and all of this is written and documented. I don't know if it's actually up yet, but it should be within a day or two.
Yes, Lauren, those things should be posted by the end of the week. And I'd be happy to email.
I attributed the question to the wrong person. The question came from Suzanne Davis.
Oh, thank you, Suzanne. Yeah, I see another one from Kevin too. Has ChemForward made connections with international NGOs or businesses to participate in this platform? Do you want to take that one, Stacy?
Yeah, so really looking at the international, you saw some of the brands that have participated, our European based, and including H&M in particular. The ZDHC has also been a co-design partners. They've worked on their Beyond MRSL strategy. Several European philanthropies have been partners to the CNA Foundation, now the Loudus Foundation. And it's important, we aspire to global, but it's really important that this launches with both US and a very European mindset, since this is where a lot of the market action is coming from and the regulatory action is coming from in Europe. And so you'll see on the slide that Lauren's got up right now that, in addition to presenting, different languages here, if you will, presenting the GHS H statements is really important. And for so many people in the US, we don't speak H statements, but if you were live on this, you could click on that and it would bring you up the H statements and so that you could start to learn what those were. That's a really important European consideration and a global consideration. And then finally, I'll say that we have a European assessor based in the UK, which brings a really nice complement to our US-based assessors too. And we often volley topics across the boundaries there. Lauren, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, do you want to say something about our partnership with ChemSec?
Thank you. Yes, and Food Packaging Forum too. But
yes.
ChemSec, yeah, thank you. ChemSec Marketplace, we just launched a news item that we will be engaging in a pilot. They are screening chemicals to post on the marketplace as safer alternatives based on their SIN list. And so if something is SIN list free, it can go up on the marketplace. We're going to be adding sort of an additional piece of verification to that by backing up that screening piece with a full chemical hazard assessment or assessments, given if it's a formulation of a product. So you will start to see in the coming months that we will start to post A, Bs, and Cs, hopefully, on the ChemSec marketplace, and that those folks who are using the marketplace to market their safer alternatives will be able to add an additional layer of verification. And I'll just add in food packaging that we have a research partnership with the Food Packaging Forum, so well respected in Europe in particular. But if you have a chance to meet Jane Monk, she's top notch. And we've been working on our food packaging agenda backed by their research set.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Lauren and Stacy, if you're able to see the questions that are coming in, do you want to go through some of those, or would you like us to read them out loud?
I think you'd better read them because I think I'm only seeing the ones from the panelists.
Oh, okay. Terry Goldberg, here's one. What is your vision for working with IC2 on ChemForward?
Oh boy, that's a great question. Well, we would like to support the variety of programs and initiatives that IC2 has. I think there's some discussion that has to happen in order to find out exactly what that means. I can give you one example of something we're doing, which is working with the state of Washington, where Washington commissioned some assessments of alternatives to diethyl phthalate for use in fragrance solvents and fixatives. So we have a nice portfolio or set of safer alternatives that we have vetted And also based on the work of Northwest Green Chemistry, who did this research a few years ago for Department of Ecology. And so this set of alternatives is freely available. If somebody wants to pay the assessors to do the work, we can make those assessments freely available. And so it's really a neat opportunity to put in a visible, centralized place that there are vetted alternatives available and they are safer, and it makes it a lot easier to support legislation or to implement legislation when you know there are safer alternatives and those are credible. That's one avenue. But Stacy, what might you say? I think there's so many things, and also learning more about what your needs are would be great.
I would back that too. But I would say now that we have established the infrastructure and piloted this idea of a globally harmonized repository, which I think many people have made calls for over the years, not the least of which was the Chemical Outlook report too, that came out last year. One of the major conclusions was, shared hazard assessment data. And so now that we have the infrastructure and the quality assurance processes to make this really robust, credible, how can we use this to support other efforts? And so we invite people to kind of get to know us better and say, how does this infrastructure work for you? We don't want to prescribe how to use this. We're going to come out with a product here and a way to look at the data there and make it accessible to this sector. But the infrastructure's here, and it could be used by governments, it could be used by coalitions, it could be used by certification programs to advance, all of our shared mission towards safer alternatives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, IC2 was a leader in making CHAs available freely to people, but I think you learned how challenging that can be to keep them up to date. So perhaps our model could support what you're trying to do there, because our program involves periodic updates by the assessors who own these assessments. So that might be one venue. And also for state government, we're doing a pilot right now where we're evaluating some chemicals that are being considered for the EPA safer chemical ingredient list. And so we're very happy to let people have access to the back end and to act like a verifier and say, well, I agree with the classification here, or I don't agree with this, whatever it takes. So you can have access to the back end if need be for chemicals of high interest to you. But there are really so many things that you can do with this. We kind of thought there would be, but now we really are seeing how true that is, that you can use tools like this for certification, for marketing claims, for regulations, for all sorts of things. So I think, I guess in a way, the sky's the limit in terms of, how people want to use this kind of information and how the information should continue to evolve in different kind of, packaging, whether it says trade names or whether it says CAS numbers, and then how that feeds into products, a little bit like the skill versus clean ingredients model. So there's a lot of ways it can go. So it'd be good to know, what's of most use and need for IC2 members. And also
Great,
which sectors
are
of interest too. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say which sectors or which chemical classes, things like that. We can, depending, we may be, as a nonprofit, we may be able to get, foundation grants to support. We've done a lot of data matching where we could match the cost of the assessment to generate it. And so that can be really useful too if there's an area of great interest to public health.
Great, and we've got a question asking if you could talk more about how businesses and governments would access the CHAs, and the second part to that do we become members of subscribers to do so?
Right. Do you want to take that one, Stacy?
Yeah, sure. I was going to jump in. As Lauren mentioned, when part of our model here is that, excuse me, the creation of CHAs can be very expensive. And sometimes the assessors, don't charge the customer the full amount because they're going to resell that to other customers. And they take, excuse me, one moment. Sorry about that. The fall leaves falling have affected my throat. And so we offer a model for those things that we're funding the creation of the CHAs to come in and subscribe. And it's a cost sharing, benefit sharing. That being said, when governments procure assessments, they usually need to be publicly available, and they pay the assessor the appropriate amount so that they can be publicly available. And when those can be publicly available, we can make them publicly available. So we can be a repository for those things that have been, where the assessor's been fully compensated and they're available to the public. And we can also put things behind a paywall that need to engage in a cost sharing, benefit sharing model. Our goal, though, I have to say, is, maybe you've paid a couple $1,000s for a CHA in the past. Our goal is to take a whole zero or more off of that, really change so that more people can access this. And when 5, 10, 20 people access a chemical hazard assessment, it's reasonable for everybody then to have access to that data. So we have different models for different needs, and we just want to use this infrastructure for good. So you tell us what your needs are, and we can adjust the model to that.
Great. Another question that's come in is, would there be a way for IC2 to contribute its CHAs to the platform?
Lauren, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Let's see. Well, to actually enter a CHA into the platform, that needs to be done by an assessor. We want approved toxicologists entering the actual information. But if IC2 wanted to sponsor any of these assessments into the platform, we would very much welcome that. Or if you need specific functional groups and the research on specific functional groups, for example, the pilot looking at the fragrance solvents and fixatives, that we already had about 3 of those assessments, and ecology covered the cost of 2. And we agreed that we would make all 5 of them freely and publicly available, because alternatives to diethyl phthalate in fragrances is a priority for the safer products for Washington, that kind of thing. So if there are specific interests, for example, this one we know is quite hairy, but alternatives to PFAS, are there specific chemical functions that would benefit from having an assessment in a centralized place? Or are there other chemical groups of interest where you need to know what the alternatives are, and are they in fact safer? One of the challenges of alternatives assessment, having done a few of these at this point, is that you work really, really hard at identifying the assessments, you evaluate them, and you publish your report, and the next day somebody changes a product name or something new emerges. Like, we want this platform to be dynamic so that new alternatives can continue to be added at any time, and that's already happened. We started, what we usually do is we quote seed portfolios. We might get funding to put 10 in, and then that really incited one of the chemical manufacturers to say, well, if you've got those 10, you should have these 4, because they're some of our safer options too. So we're happy to seed portfolios, and we want to keep growing them so that viable options continue to be available, or information on viable options continue to be available to people. So yeah, any way that IC2 can help us focus or prioritize or fund or partially fund CHAs would be most welcome.
Great. And can you talk about who would assign the ChemForward hazard band?
I did. That is done.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yep. That's just you know, we do it after the score, after the assessor does the full assessment and we get the summary table, that generates a cradle to cradle score based on an algorithm, and then that cradle to cradle score dictates which hazard band it fits into. So it's just, you know, it's pretty much a simple equation.
Okay, and we've got another question regarding what is the subscription cost for this wonderful service? Is there some way that IC2 members, especially state agencies, can access at a lower cost?
Yeah, Stacy and I talk about that a lot. We are definitely interested in, well, I'll let Stacy jump in, but we are looking at, you know, what can we generate as a free option? What we have a sort of entry level option that would give people access to all of everything that's viewed here, all of the options and their hazard bands, and then the free CHAs, and then another option that would give people access to absolutely everything, including every CHA in the system. And we are more than happy to negotiate with government for access, for whatever access is needed. Stacy, you want to correct me?
No, not at all. You're absolutely right. We will have
Okay.
special government and NGO pricing. And what we could really use, and I think the right people are on the phone today, is we could use some user input on that. What do you want access to? What's the right price point? And let's set it up. We're launching our beauty and personal care platform this week, which I think is, is not the tool that this group on the line today needs. I think you need what Lauren just described, what's everything that's free and everything else. And so that's the tool that we'd like to price out for you, and we could use some user input on that. So maybe we can have a few targeted conversations with interested folks on the line and get that set up.
Great. And someone did ask if this presentation will be available for watching. Again, this will be posted on the members section of the IC2 website. So I will let everyone know when that is available for viewing.
Great.
And
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, this was a great presentation. We're so happy to have you as members and presenting today. And I'm just, is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up, Lauren or Stacy?
I'll second what Laura said. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah,
go ahead,
thank
Lauren.
you. And please feel free to reach out if you'd like a live demo, or if you would like, if you're willing to share with us some thoughts on, how the information is presented and what's most useful to you in state government or whatever, position you're in as an IC2 member.
Great. Thank you everyone for joining. And as I said, this will be available in the near future on the IC2 member page. We continue to plan additional webinars going forward into 2021. So if you have any ideas for future webinar topics or presenters, please share that. And I just wanted to thank you all again for attending. Hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kevin. Bye-bye.
Thanks.